Good Erev Shabbos to our members and friends of the Westmount Shul. This week's Parsha is so relevant. Every Parsha is relevant for what our daily lives are, especially a number of events, people speaking to me. And there's a couple points I want to address over here. Before the 8th plague of Arba, Moshe is debating with Paro who can go and serve, and Paro finally he's ready to allow things to happen. So Paro asks the question. He says, "Lechu ivdu es Hashem Elokeichem." Go ivdu, serve Hashem your God. Mi va mi haholchim. Who's going? And Moshe says, Binureinu uviskanenu, with our adults and with our children, nelech, we will go. Bivanenu ubivnosenu, with our sons and daughters. Bitzonenu uvkarenu nelech, with our sheep and cattle, we will go. Ki chag Hashem lanu. It is a holiday to Hashem for us. And Paro responds, he says, there's no way that I'm going to send the tapchem. I'm not going to send the kids. By the fact you're sending the kids, I see you have vile intentions. That's what he says. He says, so be Hashem with you as I will send you forth with your children. Look, the evil intent is opposite your faces. Not so, he says. Lo chein, lechuna ha-gvarim, just the gvarim. Who are the gvarim? The men? Those are the men between 20 and 60. Right? That's who gets to go. And that's it. Ve'ivdu es Hashem, and serve your God, because that's what you really want. And he sends them out. So what was involved in this discussion? So the Sefer Matoka Or quotes from Rav Shlomo Zaid. This wasn't just a regular political discussion over here, but it was a fundamental discussion was taking place over here. And it really dealt with a non-Jew's understanding of religion and a Jew's understanding of religion. And Paro associates avodas Hashem as avoda, as work that has a lot of difficulty. No different than the wicked son at the Seder who says, Mo ha'avoda hazos lachem. What is this work that is for you? The Russia says, I have once a week. Once a week I have off. It's Saturday. Why can't I just enjoy myself? Why do I have to get up to go to shul? Why do I have to get up and learn Torah? Why do I have to adhere to kashrus? What's all this work? And then he continues, and once in a while we have a holiday, a real holiday, a 3-day weekend, as we're going to be having this Pesach. This coming Pesach, Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, a 3-day weekend. Oh, man. Look at all the work you got to do. Kashering the dishes. Let's enjoy the time off. So Paro says, Judaism is work. Lechuna hagvarim ve'ivdu es Hashem. Send the adult males 20 to 60 and work for Hashem, because he only understands that work is something unpleasant. And this is religious obligation you have to do, and it's hard work. Remember, there's a rule. No, something's only called work if you think it's hard. If you don't, more than that. And something's only called work if you don't want to do it. If you want to do it, it's not work. What did Moshe say? It's a chag to Hashem. So Paro is saying, work? Work's not for kids. Work's not for old people. So there's no reason for me to let you all out. Must be you got other intentions. So Moshe says, I'm sorry. Binureinu uvzkenenu, with our little children and our adults. We're going to go with our sheep and our cattle. Ki chag l'Hashem Elokeinu. You see work, a yoke, something unpleasant. We see it as a holiday. And since it's a holiday for us, also the women, also the children, also the elders, we all have to be part of the simcha. And Rav Mordechai Chilu explains later on, when in the next plague, when Paro finally submits and he says, okay, you can even go with the kids, but keep the animals behind. And Moshe says, no, you're going to give us more animals of your own. Because he says, we don't know what the service will be till we get there. And Rashi says, Kama tichbad ha'avodah, how heavy the work will be. Wait a minute. Moshe, you're calling the work, serving Hashem, hard work? But no, why is he saying that? Because he's responding to the questionnaire. If Paro is saying that it's a work, he responds to how he understands that it's work. But it's not. Paro keeps saying, Ivdu, it's work, it's work. Because Paro only understands that. But the Jews don't look at serving Hashem as work. It is avoda. We're not denying it's called avoda. But it's Chag Hashem Elokeinu. It's a holiday. And this is so critical. How do we view our Yiddishkeit and the survival of the Jewish people? The non-Jew looks as Jewish practice as work. The Jew who has non-Jewish understandings of Yiddishkeit also sees it as work. I got to get up and do tefillin. I got to get up early and daven. I got to go and give tzedakah. I got to keep kashrus. It's work. But if you understand what Yiddishkeit is all about, if you don't live in the superficiality of it, Hashem created the Jewish people. If you can listen to my Parsha class from Tuesday night, He wanted a people that would want to be close to Hashem and have a loving relationship with each other. And every work we do is an opportunity to reveal the divinity that resides in each and every one of us. There could be nothing greater and more pleasurable than revealing the infinite inside of you and bringing so much good to the world. All the mitzvahs we do recharge the universe, give it blessing. Remember, work is only something you don't want to do. If you want to do it, you're happy to do it. You feel it's meaningful. It produces something for the world. It makes a difference for the world. It brings godliness into the world. It brings blessing into the world. That's not work. And that's the challenge. How do we look at our avodas Hashem? Is it avoda or is it simcha? And that's all the difference in the world between the non-Jewish understanding of avodas Hashem and the Jewish understanding of avodas Hashem. We know, it's clear from all the holy writings, the world exists because of Torah. The world exists because of mitzvahs. The world exists because of our davening in the way Hashem told us to do things. And anybody who knows that he's contributing so much good to the world, you never find it's work, it's a pleasure. You know, things, I watch other people and they will spend hours on things I would never want to do. I think, oh, that's terrible. Let's say, I'll give a simple example. Gardening. I have nothing against gardening. It's a wonderful thing. I don't look down on anyone who gardens. It's just not for me. It's just not for me. And if sometimes I got a garden, I just look at that as work. It's not my thing. But I could see people working for hours and hours with the garden. You know why? Because they love it. They love it. It's a pleasure for them. They'll spend hours and hours. Because look, I made my own tomato. It's a wonderful thing. If that's your thing, enjoy it, and you do it l'shem shamayim. It's amazing. For me, I go to Sobeys and buy the tomatoes. And those people will do it all day long. Some of you figure out the rabbi works hard. Rabbi works hard. He prepares a class, this and that. But I love doing it. So I can spend hours and hours doing this. The non-Jew looks as avodas Hashem as work. It's not for kids. It's not for adults. They've retired. And Moshe says, no, it's a Chag Hashem. That's so critical. We're coming to Pesach. How are we going to look at Pesach? It also determines how you view religious services. When the government writes religious services, they assume, oh, it's work. Got to work. So guess what? People work for the government. They're happy to work out of home. Makes the work easier. So we'll just tell all these religious people to stay at home. Because, they won't have to work so hard. And they figure that's how they'll get agreement that stay at home, don't go to shul, don't go learn, don't do all those things. And you know what? They're right from their perspective. I totally understand their perspective. And, 90% of Judaism has said, that's right, we ain't going to shul anymore. Thank you very much for taking the work away from us. Then there's other people who say, this is not work. This is a chag. This is pleasure. This is meaning. There's certain things you can only do when you come into the office of Hashem. As wonderful as learning by yourself, learning on Zoom, praying by yourself. It's not the same. It's not the same when you're in shul. It's not the same. If it's a pleasure, we've come to an understanding. We all know there are people who abide by certain laws of COVID and some who don't. And the only factor is, how much do I want the other thing more than that? We know there's people who have, been, when it was just, you shouldn't go to other people's homes, right? There's a law, you shouldn't, but there are people who go to their family. They don't care what the law is because it's worth it. It's clear. It's a pleasure. And they want that. Judaism is, if you understand, it's a pleasure. It's such a pleasure because it's so meaningful. You bring such blessing into the world. And the Torah says when it's done in a group, much more blessing comes down. When it's done in a synagogue, much more blessing comes down. When there's all type of Torah being learned, so much blessing comes down. It's not work. So, the government feels, if we get, the teachers certainly don't want to work. Teaching kids is work. Why are they really closing down the schools? Let's be honest. Let's not fool ourselves. The teachers union is a powerful union. It's a lot of votes. It's a lot of votes. So somehow the government has to somehow balance the parents and the teachers union and this and that. And a lot of teachers, I'm saying there's a lot of good teachers, but a lot of teachers, they just want, they'd rather not work. It's work teaching kids. The teachers who feel it's a pleasure to teach kids, they're happy to come. It's all how you view this. Binurenu b'skenenu. And it goes a little deeper. Paro was very, very clever. Paro was astute because Paro understood something about the Jewish people. In order for there to be a Jewish people, there has to be a past and there has to be a future. We must have a past. We're a religion with a concept of Mesorah, a concept of tradition that we get all the way from our fathers and fathers' fathers, all the way to Sinai. This is a vital concept, the linkage to Sinai. But we're also a religion that believes that unless we have someone to give over this heritage to, we have no future. And when Paro said, let the men go, meaning the adults between 20 and 60, was effectively saying, I don't want the young to go. I don't want the elderly to go. I'm taking away your past and I'm taking away your future. And Moshe says that's unacceptable. The only way in which we can go forward as a nation is with our youth and with our elders. And the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim, the whole development and forging of the people, were with the kids and the adults also. And the Yalkut says there are 4 individuals who minted coins, and the first one who minted a coin was Avram Avinu. And what was on Avram Avinu's coin? Our sages say on one side of the coin was an elderly man and an elderly woman, and the other side was a young man and a young woman. What was the message? Avram Avinu was the founder of the Jewish people. He minted the coin of Klal Yisrael. He understood that in order for there to be a Jewish people, there has to be an old man and an old woman on one side representing the generation that provides us with guidance and that transmits to us instruction of what we should and should not do. But there also has to be little children on the other side representing the future. And that's what Paro wanted to take away from us. And Moshe said, no, we must also take our youngsters and our elders. And it was a dangerous mission to go out into a desert without having no future and safety guaranteed. It wasn't only the 20 and 6-year-olds who could weather the vicissitudes of going through a desert. Everybody has to live through that experience. That's what makes us the people that we are. The people that a child, maybe it's too hard. There are child labor laws. But Judaism is a chag, is a pleasure. There's no child labor laws against children. You're never too old to have pleasure. If your Yiddishkeit is a hard job, then you're never that excited to go to begin with. And boy, are you happy when you got an excuse to hang your head on that you don't have to go. But if it's a pleasure, even if you're not going, you are in so much pain. It's hurting you. It's killing you that you're not there. You're crying that you can't be with everybody else. And you're trying to find a way to get in. Because how else am I going to accomplish my role as a Jew? Rabbi said, we're living in a time that although it's like Paro is saying, it's echoing. Only essential services. People between 20 and 60, you can go around. Over 60, hide. You can't serve Hashem. You're too old. Stay closed up. We don't need you. Children, don't go to school. And you're going to say, Rabbi, you're so foolish. You're putting everybody in risk. I see how wonderful we're doing with all the lockdowns. California has the biggest lockdowns of every place on the planet, and they have the biggest COVID. So I don't need to be lectured on what's safety. We know what really hurts and what really doesn't. And we know there's a word called Mesiras Nefesh. And we know that you can do things safely, but with difficulty if you find it's a job. But if you think it's your greatest opportunity to serve Hashem, you welcome it carefully. And Paro was the government. If we would have listened to Dina de Malchusa Dina when Paro was around, we'd be nowhere. I'm not minimizing Dina de Malchusa Dina, but just realize that when the laws are telling us that the elders and the young cannot participate, we're in big danger. And when you have to make a decision on a private level, you got to think of what is more important. Is survival of the Jewish people more important or not? You know, it's like when you come into a shul and you see an older person. Do you know when I see in shul Sammy Polster, Milton Eugene, Earl Friedman, amongst others? Do you know how that inspires me? Do you know that inspires me to know that there's a Masorah from different parts of the world, Canada, South Africa, Hungary, Romania rather, and they're coming to shul. That's the past. That's the Masorah. You know how heartbreaking it is that there's no kids in the shul? There's no future. Oh, they're learning on Zoom. Talk to all the teachers. Talk to all the parents. They're not learning on Zoom. The amount of learning is so minimized. Yes, the very smart kids who have no attention deficit disorders, they'll learn under any circumstance. But the normal kid is going nuts. They're not learning. They're tuning out. If you knew the shalom bias havoc that is happening because of this. I know, Vilma, you are older and you don't have little kids in the house, so it's hard for you to be sympathetic. Do you know of the suicides that are happening in Thornhill? Jewish people. We're going through a year where children should say, Torah is not important. Torah is not an essential service. The children aren't in shul. I want to ask you a question. For the last 3 weeks at 12 o'clock, I spent a half an hour giving a class to little children. Don't you think I got better things to do with my time? Don't you think I'm not busy enough? And it's not a half an hour. I have to prepare for that class, just like I prepare for every other class. Why am I doing it? For one, none of them are learning with people alive inside together. I mean, I'm Zooming it too. But you know what? It's hard to have that excitement. I'm showing the kids that you are important. And we have to even find a way that the kids have to have a kid service. We have to make a separate service where the kids come into the shul to serve Hashem. These are all important things. People are being pitted to make decisions, to follow the law or follow the Torah. We already know what everybody's feelings are, and let's not fool. There's a minority of people who do everything exactly the way the law says. And we know the majority of people do not do exactly like the law says. When it's not to suit them, they don't do what the law says. You can't go to your mother's house unless she's the only person. But if your mother has another person, you can't see them. You're not allowed to see them. It's lockdown. Some people go to it anyway. Everybody does the law as it suits them. I want to know, nobody has been speeding in their lives? You never sped. Do you know you're putting people's lives in danger? You're violating the law. If you go 1 mile over the limit, you're going to kill somebody because you broke the law. No, Rabbi, you're being crazy. The law knows you're not going to, they give you 5. What do you mean? I don't understand. The law's the law. No, the law is the law the way they want the law. Really, it's just for they can make. All of a sudden we start touching up and giving definitions. Rabbi, it's preposterous, but you can't compare that to color. What are you talking about? It's going to be 10. It's going to be 10 in the shul. Mamish. So for months we had more than 10. We had 30%. What changed? And don't tell me the bigger numbers. We still have mass. We're still far away. That's the law. The law, we only can have 1 million. 10 men. Can't have any kids. Can't have any women. This and that. Well, try to be creative. Make a separate minyan for ladies. Make a separate minyan for kids. Make a separate minyan for the older people. Our future is in peril. Forget about the anti-Semitism and forget about the socialism. Forget about all that. Our own kids are crumbling. Our grandchildren are crumbling. We need to daven to Hashem. We got to get out of Egypt. And we got to have it with our kids and with our older people. Have to all be part of it. It has to get to the point where we have to be free and get out of Egypt. Imagine if the Jewish people would only leave Egypt when they found a vaccine. Again, I'm not minimizing the dangers here. I'm not minimizing, but I'm not over giving credit to the danger also. And people have to live. People have to feel like human beings. People have to have joy in their life. And sitting in a house in front of Netflix is destroying us. I am not suggesting a revolution against the government. Chas v'shalom. I'm just saying we got to be sensible how we live through this. And there was a yeshiva that I will not mention by name, did something very great. They saw how impossible it is for them to function in the free country of Canada. So, and they get a big yasher chayach through great challenges. They took the whole yeshiva of 100 boys and they moved it to upstate New York. And somehow they were able to get through some technical, there's the letter of the law and you can, find leniencies, whatever. They're not doing anything illegal. But boy, is it hard to uproot 100 boys, the Rabbeim, and they all left because they cannot exist without Torah. And yes, and even a person who's not a scholar, like a Robert Wolfson, who's no Talmudic scholar, but spend hours helping them, that everything was done legally and appropriately, and all the logistics, incredible logistics, because the yeshiva felt it's important. Binureinu. And then you see there's a yeshiva, a yeshiva ketana, a day school that dares be open. That dares be open when there's a lockdown. But they say it's religious services. Now, you understand, non-Jews cannot believe, how can you serve God for so long? And of course, they have to put it in the newspaper to amplify the fake news again. And of course, all our Jews are looking at tisk, 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 the Orthodox Jews. They're the problem over here. And you hear secular Jews saying how terrible they are. You can pray at home. They don't tell you that Health Canada came and made a full inspection and said they're not violating the law. That's like never going to make it in the newspaper because that doesn't sell. My hat's off to all the schools that are going beyond the letter of the law, that are twisting themselves into pretzels to try to find a way to not violate the law and to keep teaching, because there's nothing more important than our children. There's nothing more important than our adults, the elders, and we want to keep them safe and we want to keep them protected. And we don't want to kill them off in nursing homes like the government policies are. That's how much they care about you. That's why we've done everything we can in the greatest way to make the shul the safest place, because we need all of us. We need all of us. We understand if you want to be zooming in. You know how much harder it is. You try to be in my shoes, give a live class and a Zoom class at the same time, keep everybody engaged and know all the technical things besides the complex halacha I have to teach to keep my mind focused. I got to see this technical thing and that technical thing. You know what? But it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to interact with people. It's a pleasure to help children. It's a pleasure to help the elderly. My Rebbitzin gives a class to seniors on the Zoom. It's our great pleasure, but it'll be our great pleasure to see you in person. And if you're not in person, stop second guessing from the grandstands, please. Binurenu ubiskenenu. That's our future. And we have to realize our future is in great peril. Our children are going nuts. We have to daven to Hashem. We have to do what we can to help this. Remember, the law of the land is going to now say that if you want to die, we'll help you die. The law of the land is if you don't have an advocate and we think we should pull the plug on you, we're pulling the plug on you. This is the law of the land. I'm not saying you should flaunt it just to like a flaunting it, not going according to the law of the land. You follow the law of the land, but there's a bigger law. That's the law of Hashem. And if you need to know what to do, you ask the biggest rabbis their opinion first. And that's the law of the owner of the land. What did the Makos teach us? That everything, the land, the water, the sea, it's Hashem's. It's not Canada's. It's not Ontario's. It's Hashem's law. Hashem went through Egypt and he decided who lives and who dies. And if the Jew was foolish enough not to put the blood of the Korban Pesach on, he was dead. This is not easy. But the future is a great peril. Without our children, without our future, we have no future. Without our elders, we have no past. We want to go out of Egypt together. We want to have Mashiach, all of us, together. Let me end with a story about the Bluzhev Rebbe. The Bluzhev Rebbe of a Shpira. After the war, the Nazis murdered his wife, his only daughter, the entire family. Hundreds of Hasidim, he lost them all. And after the war, he took a lot of courage for survivors to remarry. And after his liberation from Bergen-Belsen, somebody suggested a match, a shidduch for the Rebbe, a widow who had survived amazingly enough with her 4 children. And that woman named Bronya became the Bluzhev Rebbetzin. Years later, somebody asked the Rebbe how he knew, despite everything he had gone through, that he wanted to marry his Rebbetzin Bronya. So he tells the following extraordinary story. He said at one point when the Rebbe was in Bergen-Belsen, he wanted to go to the camp officials to request permission to bag matzos. You think that's a smart thing to stay alive? I wonder what the law of the land was there. Oh, don't compare. What are you comparing Nazi Germany to Canada? I know in Canada, they'll kill you too. I guess they're not at all similar. Not at all similar. Not at all. Nothing. At one point, so that would happen. Unexpectedly, they said, okay, whoever wants to make the matzahs with you has to write down their names and will submit the request to Berlin. Great. Most of the Jews, of course, didn't want to put their names down on the request because they figured writing their names was as good as writing their own obituaries. So the Rebbe said, look, we don't have anything to lose. We're going to die anyway. So the Rebbe and 4 other men wrote their names down on the request to make the matzahs, and they submitted it. And right away, they regretted their decision. They feared, not the Rebbe though, but they feared their request was the same thing as saying to the Nazis, hey there, please kill us. But a few weeks later, the camp officials returned and announced, okay, who are the 5 people who said they want to make the matzahs? Come with us. Oh, that's it, man. Oh, man. Oh, that's it. But instead of killing them, the camp officials informed them that their request had been approved. And they baked the matzahs. But then a harder question came. Who would go to eat from the matzahs? There was only a few small matzahs and tens of thousands of Jews in Bergen-Belsen. So they're figuring out who's going to get what, however they decide. And then this mother of 4 children stepped forward and said, could you please break off some small pieces of matzah for my children? And the other people argued, but your children are still small. They aren't obligated yet to eat matzah, AKA, they don't make up a minyan either. But she answered them, my children are the next generation. They have to know what matzah is. They are the future of the Jewish people. So the Rebbe gave them the matzah. And the kids had, and maybe some adults didn't. So the question is, why did the Rebbe decide to marry that mother of 4 children after the war? And the Rebbe later explained, nobody in Bergen-Belsen thought about the next minute. So if you don't think about the next minute, you don't think about the next day, the next week. Survival was second to second. And here is this woman who's thinking she's going to survive, and there's going to be a next generation. Who's thinking about a next generation when you don't know if you're going to live or die this minute? And he said, and I knew that if this woman had that kind of courage, if she was so connected with the story of Pesach, that she believed, and we would experience our own personal exodus from Bergen-Belsen, then that's the woman I want to marry. Rabbi said, you see what's happening. There are people who are worried here from minute to minute. Are we going to live? Am I going to catch the COVID the next minute? I've heard people are dying. We're living from minute to minute. And we're only looking, we're just hanging on. But we got to realize there's a next generation that is being destroyed by our minute to minute. And we have to have the courage to say, what will the kids learn from all this? That learning Torah is not that important. That being in a shul is not that important. Binureinu v'skeneinu. Historically, they were able to survive. Those who think beyond. And it's so hard to think beyond the present. Hashem should give us the schus to have the foresight of the Blazhever Rebbetzin, to know how important the children are, how important the elderly are. We should all be zoicha, that we should all be together as soon as we can, as soon as possible. Don't wait for COVID to end for you to leave Mitzrayim. Leave Mitzrayim when it's midnight, when it's dark. Make the decisions when it's dark. Then we'll be able to leave when the light comes. Have a wonderful Erev Shabbos.